Hey, welcome to my basement, everybody. We have an incredible guest today. We're going to be talking all about Street Fighter 6. Yes, Andrew Alfonso is joining me. He is a Canadian game maker who lives in Osaka, Japan, as part of the Street Fighter 6 team. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. You and I met in Osaka, I think more than a decade ago. We've been friends for a long time.
I think we've known each other for a very, very long time. Got maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yes.
But we've never been able to work in in a professional manner like this.
No.
So I'm very happy about. I'm very happy to get on this and talk to you about what I do.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you're from Toronto
Yes, that's
originally.
correct. Yeah. I was born and raised in Toronto. I grew up there. Went to Ryerson University, graduated from there, and then right after that, I moved to Tokyo to
Yeah.
teach English, and then couple of years after that, I think I was writing for IGN.com as well as a freelancer.
Cool.
And then I got a job at Capcom in the localization department as an editor. And now I just kind of worked my way up over the past 17 years. It's been 17 years at Capcom.
That's
I know
incredible.
it's kind of shocking to hear because, most people kind of up and leave after 3 to 5 years. And
in the North American side of things, I think it's a bit different in Japan, right?
Yeah, Japan. Once you get into company, you're kind of you're basically there for life for the most part.
Yeah.
So 17 years is a long time. But it's been a fantastic trip so far in Capcom. I've enjoyed every step of the way.
Did you move to Tokyo with the dream of getting into games? Was that what you were sort of moving towards, or did that just happen?
Oh no, I think it just happened. I initially went over to Tokyo to teach English because I was thinking about going to teachers college at University of Toronto.
Okay.
But it's a big investment, as as you probably know, universities after doing your after university studies and all that stuff. And I just wanted to see, do I have the ability to teach people? Can I actually do that kind of stuff? So I decided, okay, let's do 1 or 2 years teaching English, see if I'm good at doing this, and then I can go to teachers college. And then along the way, I was freelancing for IGN.com, also some other gaming magazines. And, one thing led to another. Someone gave me a tip about an opening at Capcom. So I just applied for it on a whim. And I somehow got the job.
That is amazing. What was the first game that you started working on at Capcom?
The first game I worked on was Mega Man Star Force on the Nintendo DS.
Amazing.
It was it was great. It's right after, and I guess you as well. I'm a huge Mega Man fan, and I played the Battle Network games as well. And Capcom just released a Battle Network collection last month, and I just worked on the installments after that, the Star Force series, and that was amazing to work on. That was my very first game. I was like, this is a dream to work on a Mega Man game, and then shortly after that, I started working on Street Fighter 4. A couple months after that, so it was kind of a whirlwind tour that first year.
That was a seminal release. Street Fighter 4, I think, really shocked the world with its art style, its evolution into 3D fighting in such a dramatic way. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing title to work on. I was actually kind of shocked when I got into Capcom, and they're like, "So, what kind of games do you want to work on?" I said, "It'll be great to work on the Street Fighter game if you guys are working on it." And they're like, "Well, come with us. Let's show you something." And I'm like, "Oh, what?" And they showed me some early prototype stuff of Street Fighter 4 at that time, and it was amazing just to see that in action. I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be great! I want to work on this so bad."
That's so dope. Has the Capcom that you've worked at always been in the same facility, the place that you and I met years ago in Osaka? Has it always been the same building?
Yep. It's always been in the same building. We did build a completely new dev building right across the street since that time. Thanks to the success of titles like Monster Hunter and Resident Evil. So we have now 2 giant dev buildings that house all the dev teams cranking out all these titles.
Amazing. Because Capcom was going through some stuff right around that time. There were developers, famous, successful developers making changes and leaving and starting new studios. I think Clover was winding down right around that time.
Clover was winding down, and they eventually split off to become Platinum Games at that time. Yep. And I just arrived at Capcom just when that kind of change happened. And that was kind of shocking for me to hear about that when I first joined. They're like, well, all these people are leaving. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a shock. But Capcom's a huge company. We have a lot of
Yeah,
successful brands. I think there are a lot of once those people left, there were a lot of people under them who are really hungry to show what they could do.
for
And
sure.
it took some time to transition into those kind of roles, but I think Capcom has recovered really well, ever since.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, it really feels since Monster Hunter World, I think it's been. I mean, there's been Resident Evil titles and Street Fighter titles, but it just feels like Capcom's en fuego since Monster
Yes.
Hunter World. It just feels like, oh my God, things are just exploding. Does it feel like that inside at Capcom too? Is it that
I think it
booming?
feels, yeah, it feels very, it feels very busy, very active. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things happening, and there's a lot of people, who are working on various titles. Especially since Monster Hunter World was developed, and that was like one of the titles that I worked on as well as a localization director.
Right
And
on.
working on that, it was there was like this big, a big like pulse of kinetic energy just buzzing around it. And then when it kind of got released, and people realized just how big this franchise is going to be now
Yeah.
that the franchise is successful overseas. We know what we got to do now for the rest of our titles. So they started like kind of re-examining what they needed to do for the other franchises. And now it just seems like everything's kind of going full steam ahead with a bunch of other titles, like especially Resident Evil. We got like
Yeah.
Resident
Congrats
Evil
on
Village.
Resident Evil 4. That
Yeah,
was just
Resident Evil
incredible.
4
Village was incredible.
Yeah, Resident Evil Village and 4. I don't play Resident Evil because it's too scary for me. I'm a giant chicken. I'm a giant baby for horror games. I can't do it. And it's kind of funny because I'm managing all these localization staff under me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of have to check what they're doing, So a bunch of my people are working Resident Evil 4, and I'm looking at their scripts. I'm like, okay, this looks okay, but I want to check it in game. So I'm kind of like being forced to play Resident Evil right now, and I am not having a good time right now because there's just too many jump scares, and I'm asking them, can I put on like some debugs, God mode or one hit kill, so I could just not deal with this anymore.
Do it in low poly. Everything's gray.
Yeah, just do it in like a super, like I kind of crank up the brightness to like the max so that nothing can get me from like the shadows or anything like that. But yeah,
Play it like you're playing it on a Super Nintendo cart.
Exactly. But yeah, it's been amazing, like how many titles we've been cranking out. The pace and the quality of it's been amazing.
Well, also keeping the fans very happy, which, as we all know, not easy.
Not easy, no.
And they will let you know immediately if there's any issues. But it seems like boom, like success after success after success. It's incredible. Is it the same company? Does it feel like the same vibe? Because I had a great vibe when I was there. When I visited, I just thought, man, this is just like a testament to creativity. This is like a pillar here. Like there's so much incredible work happening out of this company, and that was a long time ago, and so much more has come. Does it feel like the same business as when you first started?
It feels the same. It also feels quite different in terms of general attitude with a lot of people. And I think in a Japanese company, a lot of times, there's this whole mindset that, you got to work late hours until like 10 or 11 p.m., whatnot.
Yep.
And if you don't do that, you're going to get in trouble with your boss and whatnot. And that kind of culture has kind of like completely changed now because now like they kind of try to de-emphasize the need to stay late. A lot of people are leaving. Like I'm working from 9 to 5:30, and that's it. Like 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'm out the door. I'm good to go.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of our dev teams, they start at like 10 a.m., so they work until like 6, and most people will just stay until maybe like 7 just to wrap things up. But it's like they're not really forced to do anything like that. So that part of the whole company has changed for the better. It's been a lot friendlier to the environment's a lot more friendlier now compared to the past when I was working here. When I was working 15 years ago. And
I guess there was a the pressure was on, right? Especially when the Platinum Games group left, a lot of those team members. I would imagine that people at Capcom felt even more pressure to succeed, and it's a hit-driven industry, and everybody was younger, right? Yep. So that across the board, everybody just worked too much. But it's good to hear that's because that mindset is really starting to penetrate into North American development. So it's good to hear that it's happening in other parts of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's it just kind of happened naturally because they realize, okay, we can't push everyone too hard because we're just going to get up and leave. Burnout. They're going to leave the company because because of burnout. And you mentioned before that working 10, 15 years in one company is the norm in Japan. It's starting to not become the norm. People will start leaving after 3 to 5 years because they're not satisfied. And so that kind of trend is happening in Japan. Because now Japanese companies realize, okay, if our talented people leave after 5 years, then we're going to suffer. So we need to treat them better. So they're getting into the whole practice of making sure that everyone is taken care of,
That's great.
And, they try to schedule stuff, just sit down meetings like, okay, we notice you're working a little bit too much. You're doing okay. Mentally you're okay. You're not burning out or anything like that. And that kind of stuff is happening not only for like the localization teams, it's also happening for other departments like, programming and game design and whatnot. It's, it's really good to see.
We're going to get into Street Fighter 6. I know everybody that's watching and listening wants all the Street Fighter 6 questions. We're going to get into that, but Andrew and I have to catch up. There's so much to talk about. This is a really interesting insight. And we talked a little bit about Platinum, which is also based in Osaka, and I love that studio. There's been a lot of water under the bridge since Kamiya-san and a few of the others had left. What's the relationship between Capcom and Platinum Games now? Or is there a friendship there or a respect there? Do you guys intermingle at all?
I'm pretty sure that people mingle about at the employee level. I think professionally in terms of at the company level, we're not really interacting, but I don't think there's any bad blood between us. I think also because Platinum seems to be working a lot closer with Nintendo now, they don't really need to worry too much about having to find other publishers to take their work and publish it for them, right? Because they just released Bayonetta Origins this past year, and that's a Nintendo thing. And so long as they're working with Nintendo, I think they're in a pretty good spot. But I do know that there are a bunch of people from Platinum who meet up time to time with Capcom people.
I think that's so important, right? I mean, I feel like every center that there's a lot of studios and a lot of game makers, it's almost like a mini GDC in a way. It's much more social, but I think it's so important to kind of get together and share philosophies and perspectives.
Share the war stories and everything like that. Yeah, for sure.
War stories, for sure.
Yeah. And we actually have someone on the Street Fighter 6 team who came from Platinum. His name is Hashimoto-san, and I believe he was the director for Star Fox Zero, and I think he worked on the Bayonetta titles as well. Bayonetta 1 and 2. Wow. And I think he left Platinum to move to Capcom, and he's working on the World Tour mode for Street Fighter 6, like the level design and whatnot. And he's a really, really friendly guy, very easy to talk to. And just because he came from Platinum doesn't mean we have to treat him any differently. He's a he's a talented guy, and so we can he's in charge of a really big important part of Street Fighter 6, and he was given that because he's talented, not we didn't kind of put him at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, just because he came from somewhere else. He was immediately given his responsibilities because of his talents.
And that might be a little bit of a different way that companies are treating each other, I think, in Japan a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think before if you're going to another company, no matter how good you were at your job, you would just be right at the bottom. It didn't matter. But now that's kind of changing. Now people realize, okay, this person is good. He's got the talent, he's got the experience and the insight. Let's put them at a position where they can actually spread that knowledge to everyone else and do something good for the companies.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Japan a ton over the years, but it's been a few years now. Last time I was there was in 2019, but I definitely, I mean, so much incredible work has come out of Japan, but now we're decades into this medium, and I think there's got to be a lot more kind of acceptance that we're here for the long haul and we need each other to keep going, right? And it takes a lot of work. Yeah. and you don't have to be specific about it, but how much bigger of a team is a game like Street Fighter 6 compared to something like Street Fighter 4 or even Street Fighter 5? Is it magnitudes larger?
I think it's magnitudes larger. I think I think comparing Street Fighter 6 to Street Fighter 4 and 5 is a little bit unfair because Street Fighter 6 is just so much bigger in terms of scope. But like even like I was the localization director for Monster Hunter 4, and then I was also the localization director for Monster Hunter World, and those games are like that's like the main entries for the series, and even that staff was just like magnitudes larger in terms of like in-house staff, but also like outsourced staff as well. It's just they're incomparable, just because the scope of game development has just gotten so big over the past like 5-6 years. You just need like hundreds of people to work on it, and like maybe 10 years ago, if you're working on PS3 or even like Nintendo 3DS games, like maybe 100 people would be enough, but that's no longer the case.
Yeah. So you don't know everybody's name anymore.
I do not know everyone's name. I kind of have to look at the seating chart, and I kind of have to because I'm, in Street Fighter 6, I'm like one of the section leaders for the game. So I have to talk to those other section leaders saying, hey, I need to talk about this. Who should I talk to? And they're like, well, talk to this person. I'm like, I have no idea who that is, but I'll look at the seating chart and I'll find them and I'll go over there and talk to them. But even even Street Fighter 6 has like it's not just like one floor of dev; it's like multiple floors of dev for this game. So
amazing. Well, that's one of the signals of success. Maybe it's there's a little melancholy with it. You're just growing so big, you can't wrap your arms around the whole team anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't really know everyone, and everyone kind of comes and goes too. Like some people are only here for a couple months just because there's a specific thing that they need to do, and then they got to go to a next project to do another thing. That's happened quite a few times. I think the programmer that I was working with on Street Fighter 6, he was with me from the beginning, and he left a couple months ago just to go to another project, and so I've kind of been like flying solo by myself. It's kind of been kind of sad, and sometimes I see him in the hall, I'm like, hey, long time no see. Let's catch up sometime.
You have to work with a lot of outsourced companies, and I think a lot of people that follow the games industry have an understanding of what that means. It's basically distributed development now, right? You have got partner companies all around the world, and when you're talking about an international game that has to be localized for different territories, and all the approvals and scripts and all of that stuff have to work. And is that a part of your workload as well, as to kind of interact with?
Exactly. That's probably like 40% of my work right there, just talking to these like external developers and making sure we get everything properly localized into multiple languages. I'm also like I'm the voice director for the game also, so I'm doing all the English voice directing. So I'm talking to studios in Los Angeles to get that done, and writing their scripts and making sure that they get all the stuff they need to do their job. And then sometimes I'm actually on Pacific time because I'm recording, and thanks to COVID, we haven't been able to fly out to the States for recording. So I've had to do everything remotely. So I've been like waking up sometimes at 3:00 in the morning to do recording, and then going until like 11, full day recording, and then working until like 3 p.m. just to do, like my usual localization translation work. That's been that doesn't happen all the time, of course, because if that did, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. But there was a spell where I had to like kind of gun it for a while.
Well, and we're going to get into that for a second here, but I think you guys did it to yourself with all of this recording, with the idea of like customizing your commentary and pulling in different. That is not an easy task. I do want to ask one last question before we get into the Street Fighter 6 stuff, and that is about the city of Osaka, which I think is it's a wonderful, wonderful place. Every time I've been, I've just had an incredible time there. Ben Judd took us all around. He's a really fantastic guy. But it felt also like it's a very game friendly, like a video game friendly town as well. Is there an awareness of the creativity coming out of video games in the city?
Oh yeah, I think you can find it all sorts of like little pockets within Osaka. There's there's a lot of actual gaming bars like you can find like in downtown Osaka.
Yeah.
They kind of like
I went to one of those. It was awesome.
yeah, it's awesome. And like, it's kind of those things are kind of cool because they kind of replicate like the old family basement vibe with like, the green red carpets, and then sit down on like cushions and play like your Super Nintendo games and whatnot. That's really
I
cool.
love it.
And we have our own version of Akihabara in Osaka called Denden Town. So that's a thing, and you can find like all sorts of gaming stuff there. There's also like a bunch of retro arcade just scattered across the city.
Yeah.
I think there's one close to Sutenkyaku, which is the big tower in Osaka, and they have like I think older versions of like Street Fighter and Final Fight and other arcade games. I know they have like the pirated version of Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter like Rainbow Edition or something like that, where you can like kind of change characters like just by pressing the start button and stuff like that. And
That's
it's like
cool.
it's all over the place in the city. It's it's a really friendly vibe. I spent 2 years in Tokyo teaching English, and then I moved to Osaka, and I prefer Osaka a lot more to Tokyo. I think Tokyo is a kind of a city that's too big for me.
It's a hard town to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
Tokyo is incredible
gigantic
to go to, but it's just like, it's an overwhelming city. It's kind of like, it's like going to London or New York. It's just like, God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Osaka is a lot smaller. It's more like Toronto or Vancouver in terms of size, right?
Right.
And it's just a vibe. So I found it a lot easier to get accustomed to everything in Osaka compared to Tokyo. So
yeah,
I love it here. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're 17 years or 18 years in Japan now?
17 in Japan. So actually let me check my calendar. Oh, it's gonna be next month is gonna be my 19th year in Japan, actually.
Wild.
So it's almost 2 decades. I'm getting close to like half my life in Japan, which is
incredible.
It's a very scary thought.
Did you dream that for you, or did it work out that way?
No, it just worked out that way. I had no intention of leaving Canada at all. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, work in Toronto and get a house in Toronto and do all that kind of, family stuff. I had no intention of like ever moving to another country. It just kind of worked out like that.
That's so cool, though. That's awesome. So, do you have Japanese citizenship? Are you a citizen?
No,
of Japan?
I have a permanent residence, so I can just stay here for as long as I want to. But I'm still fully Canadian. I'm married, so I have also a daughter. She's for the time being, she's a dual citizen, so she's got her citizenship for Canada. Cool. So that's all taken care of.
I know people that are going to be listening to this or watching this are going to wonder about that. What would you say to people that are aspire to teach in Japan or make a move like that? Well, what advice or piece of wisdom would you give to people that might be thinking about that?
I think the only thing would be just like, just keep an open mind about everything. Also, because just Japanese culture is just really, really different compared to Canadian culture in a lot of ways, and it also has some similarities to it. I think because my wife who's Japanese, she's just like, oh, Canadians are a lot like Japanese people. I'm like, well, okay, well, whatever. That's we do have some, there are some similarities, but I think in terms of customs, how you're supposed to talk to people and all that kind of stuff, it's just very different, right?
Yeah.
And you just need to keep an open mind and just kind of, go along with it. If someone tells you this is how things are done in Japan, then just go with it and kind of try to see, if you can get used to it. I think the only other piece of advice I would say is like just learn Japanese as soon as possible, because I came to Tokyo with zero Japanese knowledge. So the first 5 months in Japan was just horrendous for me, because I couldn't even order at McDonald's, for God's sakes.
Wow.
I had to like look at the menu and point at stuff. I want this Big Mac combo right here.
And that wasn't the smartphone culture that we have now.
That was not the smartphone culture.
Yeah, you've got all kinds of translation apps and everything
that was
now.
Not even like YouTube was not even a thing back then either. So even just like studying, I had to just like get a dictionary from like a bookstore.
Paper dictionary.
A paper dictionary and a paper textbook, and just learn. And like it was I remember like the most vivid memory I have, like the first year in Japan, was me sitting in a restaurant. After 6 months, I just got fed up with not knowing Japanese, and I just went to a 24-hour. And this is a thing in Japan, like some restaurants are open 24/7, so you can just stay there for the whole night. And I would finish teaching for the day. I would go to the restaurant and order just like a drink and like maybe like a hamburger or something, and just stay there for 5 hours studying Japanese for like
good for you
for like 3-4 months until I could get to the level where I could actually communicate. And that took about a year for me to do.
That's fantastic. And now, are you fully like backwards, forwards fluent? Are you like, can you pass as a Japanese person now when you're walking around the street?
If I don't say anything, I can pass for a Japanese person. But if I open my mouth, then yeah, it's pretty apparent I'm still Canadian. Like I can do my job. I can translate. I can interpret. Conversations. I can interpret actually business meetings in Capcom. Also, that's part of my job as well. But it's very apparent, when I talk, like, I'm not a native speaker, but that's okay because people, especially people at Capcom, they're really forgiving about that kind of stuff. Like they know, okay, Andrew is not native, so we'll try to understand what he's trying to say as much as possible. And they kind of work around. They kind of work with it, and that's kind of deal with all the localization directors too. We're not native speakers, but we can't get our point across so that they will, they will have some forgiveness there, which is really great. I think.
They appreciate the efforts.
They appreciate the effort, yeah, and they appreciate the fact that translating from English to Japanese is really difficult. But what they're saying from Japanese to English, we can do that perfectly, so that they know, okay, what they want to say, what they want to communicate, is going to be interpreted like accurately to whoever they're speaking to.
Very cool.
They appreciate that, and they know that what they can trust us with that kind of work.
We're going to roll into the Street Fighter section of the program now.
Okay.
But you have, this is obviously a global brand, and it's, you're talking about global fighters and stuff, but I would imagine that you're handling all the English speaking territories around the world, sort of managing all that localization. Do you have colleagues that are handling the French and the German and the Italian?
Oh yeah. We have.
Are they all headed up there, or do they all work with you in Osaka? How do you do that?
Yeah, the large majority of our staff is internal. So we have about 40 people in our localization department right now, and so we handle Chinese, Korean, Arabic, French, Italian, German, Spanish, all internally.
Wow.
And so, once I finish with my English localization for the game, I hand it over to those languages. And so they get started working on that. And we also...
So you guys could actually cosplay as Street Fighter characters.
You probably could, yeah. I'll probably, given my size and everything, I'll probably have to go see Honda, but we'll get our French person to show up as Manon, the new character from Street Fighter 6.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but we work very closely with the dev team, because I'm actually sitting literally like two seats away from Nakayama-san, who's the director for Street Fighter 6. So whenever I have a question, I could just ping him. I have the scenario writer for Street Fighter 6 right behind me. So if I have a story-related question, I could just ask him for clarification. So it all kind of goes through me, and then whenever some of my colleagues have some questions, I kind of just round them up and ask the team for them, and then you kind of disperse the knowledge to everyone else.
That's amazing. And so 40 people handling localization on this game, that's probably bigger than the size of the original Street Fighter 2 team.
Probably, yeah. I'm guessing so.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the whole localization team probably outnumbers this whole Street Fighter 2 development team. Yeah, for sure.
Which is incredible. Crazy. That's how far things have come. Okay, well, the story mode, I think, seems like the perfect place to start, because World Tour, there's 3 major modes in Street Fighter 6, yes?
Yes, there's 3 major modes, yes. So we have the World Tour mode, which is kind of like our single-player story-based campaign mode. It's more like an open world, kind of do what you want to do kind of mode, which is really cool. It's kind of a first for the Street Fighter series. We have the Battle Hub, which is like an online-only experience where you kind of meet up with your fans. You can do matches in Street Fighter 6, or you can play other games, do other kind of cool little things there. And then you have Fighting Ground, which is like the traditional Street Fighter mode, where you do arcade mode, go through each character's story, or you can do one-on-one versus. You can also do like online matches with other people in ranked matches or casual matches. So yeah, it's basically like kind of like making like
it's three games.
Three games in one, basically.
That's what I saw when you guys did the showcase. I'm like, holy crap, look at how much stuff is in this game. It's unbelievable. And it was like, and no, wait, there's more. It just felt like one of those old videos. It's like, no, we got this, exactly. We got that, we got this. It was freaking me out. I couldn't believe it. So let's start with when a person boots the system, the console of their choice that they're going to play. What are they going to see? Are we right into the story right from the very beginning?
No, you're going to right when you boot the game, you're going to be presented with the 3 modes: World Tour, Battle Hub, and Fighting Ground. So you get to choose what you want to do because we do have a wide audience. Thanks to Street Fighter being around for almost 3 decades now. There are people who just want to focus on. Thank you. There's only there's going to be some people who only want to focus on the competitive esports side of Street Fighter. So that's where they can do fighting. They can do Fighting Ground there. You're going to have some people who want to just, hang with their friends and, just play some casual matches. That's what Battle Hub is for. And there are some people who are, they're not really interested in the competitive nature of Street Fighter. They like Street Fighter in terms of the characters and the world and the lore. And so that's what World Tour is about. So
that's great.
Depending on what your tastes are, what you want to experience, you choose one of those 3 modes. And obviously, if you're a competitive player, sometimes you just don't want to do, grind it out every day. You want to kind of take a break and do some mindless fun. So they might go to World Tour one time, and then that single player World Tour player might want to be like, okay, well, I want to hang out with my friends and play some Street Fighter, so they'll go to the Battle Hub and whatnot. So there is always going to be a choice right when you start up the game.
Was this concept, the World Tour mode, was this something that the team has been thinking about for years, and this was the iteration to finally take that leap?
I think they had this idea in their mind for quite a long time, because I remember when I was working on Monster Hunter World, Nakayama-san, the director, he actually was talking to me about this kind of concept. It was kind of like an idea in his head, like, what if we did this? What if we did this? Kind of thing. And I thought it sounded really cool. And I just told him, that sounds amazing. You should do that. And so, that's been in the works for a very, very long time. And it's great that we were able to get it done with Street Fighter 6, right? It's great to see it come into fruition, basically.
So when you jump into the mode, you're creating your character and you're going into a gym and you start training and basically get the ticket to go and cruise around the streets and prove yourself. Is that kind of the way it is?
Yeah, that's what it is. And the whole story of World Tour mode is, you're a fighter who's seeking strength. You want to know the answer to the question, what is strength? That's the whole cool. Vibe with World Tour mode. So yeah, just as you said, and people can play the demo right now because the single player demo is out now. You can, you'll start off in a gym with one of the new main characters, Luke, and he's going to kind of train you at the beginning, but then he's just going to kind of let you loose into the wild so that you can go around and do whatever you want to. And it's kind of funny, right off the bat, he just tells you, everyone in this city fights. We can fight. Fighting is the basic form of communication in this world. So it's like saying hi with your fists kind of thing. And so you can literally go up to a grandma and be like, hey, I want to fight you. And then you have a Street Fighter fight right around the streets and everyone comes around to cheer you on and stuff like that. But, that kind of very fun, goofy stuff is one part of the World Tour mode, but there is an actual storyline that players will navigate throughout the course of the mode, and there's going to be a bunch of other mini games that you can play. There's also a lot of sub quests, side quests that players can get into, which features some pretty obscure characters from the Street Fighter universe. I think some people are gonna encounter some characters and be like, I think I remember that character from this game or this game, and we're gonna be able to flesh out a lot of these characters, and also just Street Fighter universe in general. It just becomes a lot more detailed.
When I see it, Andrew, and I haven't touched it, I haven't had time to download the demo. I'm waiting for the review code, and I can't wait to review it. But when I see it, I think that it is it's the full idea, the full concept of going 3D with Street Fighter. And you guys went 3D with Street Fighter 4, but now it's like what 3D means. Like we're going into the backgrounds, we're going to see the people that would normally populate the 2D fighting, but we're going to actually interact with them, and we're going to, come at all of these different wacky angles of Street Fighter fun from a more fleshed out three-dimensional vantage point. It's really like we're taking, the two-dimensional angle that we've had, and we're really going into that world. And I mean, that's a simplistic way to kind of define it, but that's what I see when I see the game in action.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think there's just so many like little humorous touches here and there in the traditional 2D Street Fighter that everyone kind of notices, but we're not really able to like interact with. But now with Street Fighter 6 and World Tour mode, all these little touches here and there, we're able to replicate that in full 3D, and now you're able to like kind of like fully immerse yourself in the Street Fighter world. It's no longer just a it's no longer just a backdrop. It's like it's the world. You're in it now. That's kind of
so. What are you guys hearing from the fans and maybe the non-fans, maybe the people that used to be fans, or they're just not hyper competitive? And so I know what you're saying. Like you have this core group of people that just play for fun, and then you've got these hyper, like know every combo, know every move, elite player out there. What are people saying about World Tour? What are you guys hearing?
I think that the vibe has been very, very good for World Tour mode. I think a lot of people have kind of like understood what we are doing now. Like when we first kind of revealed World Tour mode like last year with the first couple of trailers, people kind of got an idea of like, okay, they're kind of going for this kind of vibe. But now that the demo's out, people have gotten their hands on it. They kind of really understand, okay, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to like mix all these kind of different like gameplay elements. You have like, battles are still conducted on a 2D plane, just like in traditional Street Fighter, but you're navigating the world in a full 3D environment, just like an open world or a third person view game kind of thing. And it's like a huge marriage of just all these different elements that come together to make something that's, kind of familiar on many different services, but at the same time, because you're kind of combining them into one package, it kind of becomes a very fresh and unique take on the world, like the open world concept as well, right? I think that's what the vibe has been, at least from what I've seen on like online and on forums and stuff like that.
That's great. Well, the other thing that I think makes this a true 3D experience in the full sense of the word is that it isn't one city. Because Street Fighter has never just been one city. We're actually bouncing around. When I saw that, I'm like, holy crap. I didn't know that that's what we were doing. We're going to all different parts of the world, just like you do in the 2D game, but now you can run around in all of these different environments.
Right. Yeah. So we do have one other big world, which is called Naishal. It's a fictional country that's based in Asia. And that's just as big as Metro City, the initial city that you start off in World Tour. And there's also the other stages from Fighting Ground. We kind of brought them to World Tour mode, so they're not fully 3D like Metro City and Naishal, but you can still walk around them on like a kind of 3D plane as well. So that cool. When you go to Japan, you're going to be traveling to Genpu Temple, which is a Ryu stage from Fighting Ground. So you can see him in the background, and you go up to talk to him and start off his like kind of quest line to become his disciple and learn all his moves. And then you can go to the Jamaica stage, Bathurst Beach, and DJ will be there just chilling out on a car, and you can go talk to him and start off his quest line. So it's a very awesome. Expansive world. Yeah,
that's incredible. I cannot wait to dive into that. Now, you mentioned something in Fighting Ground, and that is kind of playing through the single player story mode of these different characters. Is it the same story from World Tour? Are you reusing cut sequences or assets, or is it different?
They're two separate so
modes. It's like a full separate game, like you said.
Yeah. Basically, World Tour mode is basically like it's basically your story. That's what it is. It's your avatar story as they grow in strength and become stronger as a character, and you'll meet the Street Fighter characters, and they'll help you get stronger because they'll teach you their moves and their styles. And when you talk to the Street Fighter characters, you'll learn more about their backgrounds as well. And it's really, really cool. It's almost like it's very much like a Persona in that sense, where
Wild.
you build Link's social bonds with the legendary fighters,
Yep.
and they'll kind of like drop more lore bits for you, which is really, really
Amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
But then like fighting ground arcade mode, that's basically the canon storyline for each of those legendary fighters. So
Cool.
when you go to arcade mode and you go into story mode, that's going to be you can go throh Ryu's story, you can go through Chun-Li's story, and Kimberly's story and whatnot. So you get their official storyline for the game. So it's like
Very
two
cool.
different storylines going on at the same time.
That's amazing. Let's get the timeline sorted for people out there that might be curious. Where does the world of Street Fighter 6 and the time of Street Fighter 6 take place?
Mm-hmm. So I can't tell you the exact number of years, but I do know it takes place after Street Fighter 3. And before, like, Street Fighter 3 was always considered the end of the Street Fighter timeline. That's been like that for very long. But now they decide, okay, Street Fighter 6 is going to be after Street Fighter 3. So, and this is kind of obvious when you see some of the characters that come up in Street Fighter 6.
Growing beards and stuff.
Yeah, growing beards and whatnot. Chun-Li's a little bit more elegant and a little bit older in appearance, And you have some of the characters like Li Fan. She's Chun-Li's adopted daughter. And in Street Fighter 3, she was just a little girl, like about 3 or 4. But now in Street Fighter 6, she's like about teenage age, around there. You'll see these kind of like little hints about where the game is in the timeline just by interacting with the characters.
That's awesome. I actually have some questions from different social media places, but one of them is from Bear Safi at Baruti on Twitter, and he says Street Fighter 6 includes the original 8 World Warriors from Street Fighter 2, with this being the first game that takes place after Street Fighter 3. Are there plans to bring back a group of characters from Third Strike?
No comment.
Yeah, there's going to be some super fans that have a few questions. Totally cool. Okay, so Fighting Ground is going to be very familiar for people that have dropped in, dropped out of Street Fighter games over the course of years.
Yes.
It's going to feel like a traditional Street Fighter experience. World Tour opens it up in a whole different dynamic. But let's talk a little bit about Battle Hub, which is your social space for people to collect and for you to jump online. Is there a local component to Battle Hub too? Like, can you go in with 2 people? Or
there's no local component to Battle Hub. It's just online only. So you can only have one person at a time. There's no local thing there, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So one of the cool things, I mean, obviously you can meet and challenge each other, and you can set up the game in a bunch of different ways, right? You can basically customize the combat in a myriad of different ways and jump in, turn it almost into a party experience. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that you guys were talking about.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is so cool. I mean, you can have the traditional fights and, can be ranked and not ranked and all of that stuff, which is amazing. But you can also get goofy with it if you want to just have fun.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you bring basically your avatar from World Tour mode. You bring them into the Battle Hub, and you interact with other players like that. So, I don't know if you've seen some of the more curious designs. I'm going to say curious, not to offend anyone. Some of the most curious designs that some people have made up, but there's some really, really cool avatar designs that people have made up with the demo and also the beta test that we had in the past. But you're going to be able to customize your character's appearance, like their clothing and whatnot. So when you go into World Tour mode, you're going to be able to purchase like clothing and whatnot through just in-game currency. Like, you beat a grandma on the street, she drops like $100, so you go to the store and buy yourself a new hoodie kind of thing, and then that clothing is going to be something that's displayed in the Battle Hub when you go there. So you can show off your cool coordination to other players. Battle Hub also has this really cool club feature, so you can create a club with your friends, and then when you do that, you can actually make your own club uniform, which is really cool. So it's basically like being part of like a hockey team or a soccer team.
That's great.
Design your own uniform, and then everyone in that club will have access to that. So you can literally like take over a Battle Hub server with everyone dressed in your club uniform and just
awesome.
running around doing whatever. It's really, really cool to see.
That's really cool. The thing that caught my eye, because I'm a retro nut, is all of the arcade games that you have in Battle Hub. How
Yep.
are those going to work? Are they going to be unlocked, or do you unlock them, or do you have to buy them and download them? How are we going to have access to all those arcade games?
So from what I know, they're available in the Battle Hub and they're on a rotation there. So
Okay.
so they're going to be rotated out like every now and then, and it's kind of apparent once you interact with the game cabinet. It'll say like, this game is available from this time to this time, and then after that, new game is actually
That's cool.
swapped in.
And are they the
But
full games, or are they
it's going to be the
demo?
full arcade game.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so just one thing though, it is the arcade versions. Like there's for example Street Fighter 2, and so it's not going to be the Street Fighter 2 from the Super Nintendo versions where you can do a bunch of like customization with the options and whatnot. It's just going to be the arcade versions. So it is you have to understand that there are going to be some limitations because of that. But you'll be able to. Yeah, it's
amazing.
Cool to see.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this real-time commentary, which is also, I mean, it's like one mind-blowing feature after another with this freaking game, but I've never seen anything like this where there's actual esports commentators are adding their own commentary to matches. So like the recording of that must have been, and you're probably still recording that. Are you still recording?
I can't say recording or not, but it was a gigantic effort. That was basically like myself. I did all the script writing myself, and did the voice directing.
Wow.
I was working with a sound designer and a game designer on that to get everything just right.
So you start a match and you can choose the voices of the people that are going to comment on the match.
Yes, you can choose a play-by-play from 4 people, and then you also have your color commentators, another different set of 4 people. And then there are some other like little options, like you have this option called rally support. So if you turn that on, and let's say that you make a mistake in the match or you lose a round, then the commentator is actually going to try to give you some inspiration, some encouragement. Like, they'll be like, don't worry about the loss, just, pick yourself back up and just kind of refocus. Awesome. So they kind of give you an encouragement. And some people I saw some people like online getting really into that because they're like, wow, this guy is like, he actually has my back. He's, giving me some support while I'm in this match. It's awesome.
It's so clever. It's so humanizing too, right? Because you're working with the people that you guys must work with in reality on the Capcom World Tour, right? Or the fighting tours. Yeah,
exactly. That was actually one of the things that we were talking about when we first started working on the commentary stuff. Like, who are we going to get for the commentators? Because they were wondering, okay, do we go with the traditional esports commentators that we've been using on the Capcom World Tour, or do we try to get like celebrities or whatnot to do these commentary lines? And I felt that it's better to go with the esports commentators that we use on the Pro Tour, just to promote synergy, but also have a familiar voice, because a lot of people who are going to turn on this commentary are going to be people who are more focused on the fighting ground aspect of the game. They're going to be a little more serious, and they're probably watching tournaments, online anyways. So to have those players have their matches commentated on by the actual commentators,
it's fantastic.
It's really cool.
I think every fighting game is going to do that. Are you cool with every fighting game stealing that idea? Because it's such a good idea. Yeah,
they can do that, but we there's a patent on it, so.
Oh, very good. Good luck. That's awesome. So it's not just. So that says that it's not just you recorded a bunch of stuff and if this equals that.
Yeah. There's a whole mechanism behind it. I'm not going to get into it because we are actually going to talk about it maybe sometime in the summer in Japan. We have a talk lined up to explain the system. It's only going to be in Japanese, but I'm kind of hoping to talk about it at GTC next year, if possible.
Amazing. Yeah,
but
I think people are going to. Yeah, when you look at the feature set for this game, it looks like nothing was cut. Did you? It looks like every idea you guys could possibly add to ship a game went up on the board, and you said, "Yep, we're going to." I mean, it a lot of it just looks impossible to me, but you guys have been able to achieve it all in one game. Was this something that was on the bubble? Were you guys always sure you could pull this off?
Oh, the commentary stuff? No, I think the
Yeah.
commentary stuff that was always going to be a thing. I think that's what they're really really pushing for. And I'll admit, like right off the bat, when I first joined the team, they're like, "So we're going to do this commentary thing." And as soon as they said commentary, I was like, and my eyes just kind of bugged out. I'm like, "Oh, really? No, no," because like, especially for localization, just because we're not focused on just one aspect of the game. We have to kind of touch everything in
Yeah.
the game because
Yep.
there's so many, like there's like dialogue, there's menus, there's voice
Yes.
and everything. We're touching so many things. So like the kind of like the gears start grinding in your head when someone starts talking about adding something. And in localization, you're kind of like trying to figure out just how big an effect this is going to have on everything
I mean,
else,
that's so much
right?
information you're conveying to the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
player.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
unbelievable.
And so like they talked they were like, so we're gonna do this commentary thing. And I kind of like as soon as they said that, I was just kind of like calculating in my head. And like within 5 seconds, I was just like, no, I don't want to do this because I'm like so afraid that this is gonna be just such a gargantuan task. I didn't know if I could do it or not. But
Truly,
then
yes.
yeah, but then they showed it to me, and like I didn't say no as in like I'm not doing it. I was like I was just half joking, like,
You're
oh my God, like you guys are
you're
nuts. Like,
scared.
okay,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
it's
scared.
nuts. And what's crazy is that that's not the main feature. Like in
Yeah, that's
almost
not the
any
main.
other year, that would be like the highlight component of like, this is what we did this. But it's just like, yeah, we also added. I mean, that's what drove me crazy about the last reveal, you guys. It's like, holy crap, how did you do all of this stuff in one
Yeah, yeah,
fighting
yeah.
game?
No, it's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because when we started doing the commentary stuff, so we were doing it, and to be honest, I didn't know if we were going to be able to pull it off. So we were like working really hard on it,
Yep.
and we just finished recording the first block of lines with our first commentator, whose nickname is Vicious,
Yep.
as Jeremy
Yep.
Mitchell,
Yep.
and we put it into the game, and we started playing it, and then we like we're doing all the matches. We just had like computer versus computer matches just to see like how many lines we could kind of trigger, and it was amazing like how well it kind of turned out. Like personally I was shocked. I didn't
That's cool.
realize it was going to be this good, and then the producers also were watching this at the same time I was, and they said they were like, okay, we can promote this. This is something that we can,
Totally.
make a
Yeah.
trailer and promote it. And that was actually not in the cards at the beginning. They
Right.
didn't know if that's going to be a feature that they wanted to promote or not. But
Yep.
because of how well it turned out, they're like, okay, we'll make a trailer for this, and we'll highlight all the commentators so that it'll be a whole thing unto itself,
Right
which is
on.
really good to hear.
How were like this must be like the greatest tribute to their work for the commentator. They must just be over the moon that they're in the game.
They were going nuts, and it was
Yeah.
hilarious because when I was the one who contacted them and pitched the whole idea to them and whatnot, and they were kind of looking at me like, you are joking, right? You're lying. You're not doing this. And I thought we're doing it, and so we did it, and they were actually very very nervous when we were recording the first couple of days because they didn't
Yeah.
know if they were doing a good job or not. Because commentating on live matches,
Sure.
it's a
Yes.
very reactionary thing. It's
Yes.
very different
Absolutely.
from doing a pre-recorded thing. It's different techniques to understand. And
Totally.
so they didn't really know if they can pull it off or not. And we had a very fantastic voice director in the studio, helping them out, coaching them along the way. And then once we got into the game, and we were happy with it, we got them into a Zoom meeting to show them some footage, and they just went ballistic. They're like, "Oh my God, I remember all these lines and everything like that." And
Oh, that's
they
so cool.
yeah, from that point on, they were like totally into it, and they're like, okay, they kind of understood more about the whole feature and what it meant for them to be in that game.
I truly believe it's going to be like a watershed moment for fighting games, and it's going to be very difficult for companies to not make something approaching that, whether or not they can, because it just seems so cool. Now, is AI a part of that discussion, or are you guys?
I don't believe so. I think it's just mainly just handled by just like traditional programming techniques. So there's no AI
Amazing.
involved in it. Like I said, there's a whole mechanism behind it to decide like what kind of lines get triggered, because the whole thing about this commentary, and this is very unlike a game such as like the NHL games or the Madden games where
Yep.
the lines just kind of like trigger whenever kind of thing. As the matches progress, so you have your traditional round 1, round 2, round 3, and naturally the action will get more and more frantic, as you get through the later rounds. So that means round 1 should always be kind of like low key, not so shouty, whatnot.
Yeah.
Round 2 gets a little bit more excited, but then round 3 has to be kind of like screaming level kind of thing, right?
I can't wait.
And so there's a whole mechanism to decide, okay, this is where the match is. Like they kind of like look at what kind of attacks have been thrown, what kind of things have been performed by both players to determine, okay, this is where they are in the match, and then decide this is the line to trigger, I think. So that whole mechanism is really cool.
So, okay, let's get back into like the core parts of the game. How many characters are people going to get when they turn on the game for the very first time?
I believe there's going to be 18 characters right from the start. So there's the traditional first 8 characters from the original Street Fighter 2. They're all in there. And then we have some characters that are returning from the later games, such as Juri. She appeared in Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5, so she's back. There are some new characters. There's a bunch of new characters, actually. So we have, Kimberly. She's our cool, like little ninja star character. You have Jamie, who's a very young Chinese drunken boxer. You have Luke, who kind of guest appeared in Street Fighter 5. He's back for Street Fighter 6. You have one of my favorites, Marisa, who's a gigantic Italian female, like juggernaut of a character, just really, really cool. You have JP, who is kind of serving as kind of like the final boss for the game, and replacing M. Bison. So he's got a very different vibe to him. You have Lily, who is kind of a take on T-Hawk from Street Fighter 2, but they're from the same tribe. They're not related. But they come from the same tribe, so she has basically the same moveset as he does. And then you have Manon, who is a French judoka, but she's also a model at the same time, so a runway model. So she's got a whole different vibe going on with her. So you got a whole vast variety of characters to start off with.
And then there's DLC planned. I know Rashid, I think, is one of the first ones. Is he coming in the summer?
Rashid's coming in the summer, and then you're gonna have.
I love that character. He's cool.
He's fantastic, and the voice actor for him is just a fantastic guy. I love working with him. Then you have Aki, who's going to be a totally new character. She's coming in autumn this year. And then you have Ed from Street Fighter 5. He's going to show up next year winter. And then everyone's favorite Akuma will be coming next year spring.
Right on. And so that's as far as we know about right now.
Yeah, that's as far as we have announced so far, yes.
Right. And the game is going to be a part of the Pro Tour going forward? It's the main part of the Pro Tour.
Yeah, it's gonna be the main game on the Pro Tour. So they're gonna start the festivities later this year, and the Capcom Cup is gonna be held next year. And they just announced at this year's Capcom Cup, they announced that the prize pool is gonna be in total is gonna be $2 million, with $1 million going to the winner of the tournament. So it's gonna be a really, really big. Fantastic tournament to watch.
You'll be able to record some great commentary for next year's Street Fighter 7.
Well, I guess with the $1 million, I can probably buy 3/4 of a house in Toronto if I enter.
That's true. It's so true. It's ridiculous. I've got one more question out of my list, and then I've got a few questions from different people that follow EP. But one of my question is the battle damage is awesome. I've always liked that when there's some interactive elements, whether there's a background that breaks out or you fall to a different level or whatever. But battle damage has been in tons of games over the past. Does it affect the performance of you or the player that you're hurting when you damage them a little bit?
No, it doesn't have any.
Just cosmetic.
Yeah, it's just cosmetic because we don't want to have a situation where you have battle damage, and all of a sudden you can't throw punches or kicks anymore. That's kind of like unfair to the player
Yeah.
who's getting beaten up. So it's just a cosmetic thing, but it is a very cool cosmetic feature in the game, I think.
That's awesome. Do you guys ever, break the systems or test the systems just to see, like, in a what if scenario? Or is there
they do a lot. I think a lot of that stuff happens like kind of like before, like, testing them out. They kind of like have very long discussions about stuff. Like they want to do this. People kind of like just table stuff and say, hey, what if we did this? And it becomes like a whole kind of talk kind of thing. Because getting to the implementation stage means that more or less you're probably going to do it. And instead of like doing that work and then throwing it out, is better just to like kind of like talk about it more.
Right.
So
Yeah. And at the end of the day, because it's become such an important part of the industry, it's an esports game.
Yes.
And it needs to play at a super hyper competitive level. That's a main part of the product that you're making.
Right. Yeah. And you don't want to handicap those kind of players in that kind of competitive environment. Sure.
Gotcha. I didn't have this down as a question, but I just thought of this because I have viewers. Everybody's got viewers. Everybody's got people in their lives that are dealing with some kind of physical disability of some kind. And I've thought about this idea of a fighting game or a fighting character in a wheelchair. And I'm wondering if Street Fighter's ever done that, and if that is something that might be that you might want to take back to the team for the future.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think we don't have that in Street Fighter right now. I don't know if you remember this, but like even in the original final fight, the final boss was a guy in a wheelchair with a harpoon gun. So you never know, he might make a return someday. Cool. I think the team is always looking for cool concepts. I think it's getting more and more difficult to make a character that's instantly appealing, but also fresh and unique at the same time, because we're going through so many different archetypes right now. And I think touching on something like that, a character might be blind or deaf or in a wheelchair or some other one, otherwise have a disability. I think that's a really cool concept. Other fighting games have done that before. I think Guilty Gear has a character like that that's kind of bedridden. So like his bed is like a monster bed and attacks for him while he's like kind of comatose in bed. That's awesome. Which is very interesting. But I think Street Fighter could definitely use a character like that in the future.
I think it'd be cool. Yeah, I think it'd be really cool. Okay, let's get into some of the viewer questions. This one's from Aragorn7884, and when you mentioned a blind fighter, this is what spurred me wanting to ask this, because I thought of Matt Murdock. A new Marvel versus Capcom with a question mark. Anything you want to announce today, Andrew?
Nothing I can announce for that. No comment. I think everyone wants that, but that's something that's going to have to happen at a higher level. That's not my pig. Not my pig skill.
It would be wild if you guys could take the World Tour mode and apply it to a Marvel versus Capcom.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. Like just kind of flying around like Iron Man in Metro City. That would be amazing.
Incredible.
Cool.
Yes. Red Blue 9478 says vaguely, what roster size is Capcom vaguely hoping to end with? Our franchise cross. He asked 3 questions. So his first question is vaguely, what size are you hoping to end with? And you might not be able to answer that.
I don't think I can answer that. I think to be honest, I think it has to. That's going to be kind of related to how the game performs in terms of sales.
Sure.
Because if the game does do really well, then the team might decide, okay, we'll do more seasons, more characters. But if the game doesn't do well, then they might have to reconsider their current plans. Might have to cut characters and whatnot. So it really depends on how this game performs, how many units we can sell and whatnot. So if you want more characters, then you're gonna have to help us sell more.
Buy the game,
basically.
Okay, now are franchise crossovers off the table beyond costumes? Again, you probably can't tell us.
I don't think they're off the table. I do know that it is just very difficult to do that, even within Capcom, just because of all the legalities behind just game development in general, right? Because especially with voice recording,
right.
there are like all these contracts, like you can use voices for this game, but you can't use it for this game. But if you want to use it for that other game, you're gonna have to, update contracts and stuff like that. And like a lot of that stuff, like all those crossovers are usually like um kind of like not done mainly because of those reasons, because of like the
Right.
legalities of it, instead of like, people don't want to do it, because I think everyone wants to do that. But then once you kind of like dig deeper into the details of what's possible legally and whatnot, that's where people
Yeah, it's because
realize,
yeah, it's like you're almost scoping a whole new game in a way, right? When you start adding all of these characters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's like the one thing that, if we can make things a lot easier, like in terms of like, reusing media in that kind of sense, that would be really great, because we can reuse like like texture assets and whatnot, because Capcom is making the assets. We can reuse it, of course, right? Because it's our property. But let's say you have Leon from Resident Evil 4, and we can use his voice for Resident Evil 4 because that's why we recorded it. But that doesn't mean we can use it for Street Fighter, right? Like we have to like look into all that kind of stuff, and sometimes it's just too much of a hassle for a lot of people because they have to concentrate on other things for the game as well.
Yeah, and and there's something to be said about trying to like be holistic, with the brand you're trying to create as well, and sort of keep its integrity too, right? And,
right, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to like traditionally Street Fighter has not really introduced just characters into their games. We don't. I know a lot of other fighting games like Tekken has Negan from Walking Dead and Noctis Fancy 15. They introduced these guest characters.
Yeah.
But Street Fighter has traditionally not done that. They've just instead tried to take characters from the Capcom universe as just like costumes and whatnot. So it's that's kind of like the stance that the team has right now. That might change in the future. If they decide that it's worth doing, but at this time we're not really planning to do anything like that.
Cool. Okay. Adnan Qureshi says, how hard is it to find the balance on which Street Fighter characters return to a new roster versus making brand new characters?
I think that is actually kind of difficult because the franchise has been around for like 30 years. There's so many characters introduced.
And everybody wants every character.
Yeah, everyone wants every character. And like some characters, a group of people want, but they're just not that popular. And there are some characters that are super popular, but people feel like, they appeared in this game, so it's kind of like overkill to bring them in a new game kind of thing. So there's always that balance that has to be struck between, bringing an old character back versus creating a totally new character. But I think
what excites you more? Do you like seeing the new characters, or are you feel that nostalgic and that fondness for the classics?
I think as a fan, I like old characters, but creatively, like as someone who writes dialogue and all that stuff, I prefer the new characters because I like to like experiment with stuff. Sure. And let's say instead of Lily, we're bringing T-Hawk back to the game. He already has kind of his established characteristics and whatnot. So I'm kind of just like writing his character in his voice that we've always done for the past couple of years. Right. But with Lily, and she's like a mini T-Hawk, mini female T-Hawk. She has her own personality. She has her own likes and dislikes. It's more fun for me to kind of experiment with her, play around with her character, and write her lines because it's a brand new character. I can do whatever I want to, in that sense.
I love it. Yeah, you make them your own, which is awesome. And this is another character-based one. This is from Patrick Emmert at Castlevania 86. Says, with such a huge amount of characters from SF history, what goes into who makes the cut of making it into the game? That's a good question. Like, who decides that?
That'll be the director. He's got a huge vault of knowledge in his brain about all the characters, not only from Street Fighter, but like from the Final Fight universe, because they're basically interconnected at this point.
Sure.
There are a lot of Final Fight characters coming into Street Fighter, we had Cody and Guy, and Poison, and Hugo, and so they're kind of combining those two universes together. And so he kind of makes the final decision of what characters he wants to bring. And of course, it's not that he's gonna decide everything. He's obviously gonna listen to the people around him for ideas. And I think that's one of his strengths as a director. He's extremely nice guy. He's very open to hearing people's opinions. He's at the end, he's the official decision maker. But if, for example, me on a whim say I want Makoto in the next Street Fighter game, he'll take that in consideration. He'll be like, okay, well, thanks for the feedback. We'll think about it, kind of thing. But yeah, he's the one who's gonna have the final call on the lineup.
Yeah, and I guess part of the thinking with every one of because we're talking about a franchise over decades now, is you want every game to kind of stand apart from the other ones. And these are the choices that do it, right? Like this is what this game stands for.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, especially for Street Fighter 6, I think one of the aims of this game was to kind of appeal to a younger audience because,
cool.
There are a lot of people who have played Street Fighter in the past, and maybe just like you and me, we're now like in our 30s and 40s, and there's always a need to appeal to the teenagers or to the people in their 20s right now, and to bring back a character that might be a little bit older, might be appealing to some, but you want to have something that appeals to the sensibilities of a younger audience, and I think that's what we do especially with Kimberly. She's the best example of that. In Street Fighter 6, she's she's a high school girl who has some stuff that appeals to like older generation. Like she's into like 80s hip hop and stuff like that. She carries around the Walkman. She doesn't have
who isn't.
Yeah, exactly. And she doesn't use a smartphone for music. She uses a cassette Walkman, right? So she's got these kind of things going on with her. So that's kind of one of the things that the director and also the team in general, they kind of pay attention to, like, how can we appeal to people who haven't played Street Fighter, because that's really important for us.
Totally. And that's a big part of the dynamic controls and the new kind of control schematics that you have in there too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think the modern controls and dynamic controls, that's like something that it's not only for like the new players, it's also for people who have played Street Fighter 2 in the past, but they don't really have time to learn all the new
or they don't have a 6-button controller.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
They just have the D-pads. I mean, when I saw that, I know that there's some pushback from the hardcores out there on simplifying anything, but of course it makes sense. We're all using 4-button D-pads, and many of us have had so many consoles over the years, and we've bought 6-button fighting sticks that don't work with the new machine.
The new machines. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
It makes total sense to simplify it for people out there and to make it for the new controllers.
Yeah, I think a lot of the older generations, like who are going to stick with the classic controls. But I think what they don't get is that we're not really taking that away from them. That's still there in the game. And they can use it. We're just adding an alternative control scheme for a different audience. And
is that one of the rules that you can toggle when you play with somebody, that it has to be classic controls versus dynamic controls?
There's no toggle for that, but you can see who's using it. Like especially if you're playing online, you can see there's like a little icon that says, this person's playing modern controls, this person's playing classic controls. But in my opinion, I think if people who are using classic controls are complaining that someone's using modern controls, my advice would be like, well, that means that you just have to get better. Because
there you go.
if you feel that you're so hardcore and competitive, then that you just have to get better so that doesn't happen again. That's just kind of the thing.
Totally. Yeah.
I think
anybody good at the game right out of the gate has played it for a while with classic controls, right? So if they switch over to modern controls and start kicking butt, it's not like when you play modern controls, it doesn't make it easier.
No, it doesn't. Actually, I think it actually makes it more. There's actually limitations to modern control because, with classic controls, you have your 6-button layout, so you have access to all of your attacks right from the get-go. But with modern controls, you only have a limited set of attacks, and you can't really control a lot of like the minute details of battle with modern controls. And there's also a slight damage reduction for all the attacks, so you're not doing full damage.
So you guys balanced all of that too, then?
Yeah. So they balance all of it. So you're not doing full damage in modern controls. You have to go to classic controls for that. but
Right.
it's just easier to do things in motor control. So they kind of took that into consideration.
I mean, you guys know what you're doing. We've got a great one from John Yomtoff. Will we see Steam Deck support on day one for Street Fighter 6?
I'm not too sure about official support. I do know that people have been playing around with Steam Deck and the demo, and they've gotten to work like at 60 frames per second. So from what I know, it works just fine. I'm not too sure about the online component though, but that's a different story, I think.
That's awesome. Can I play offline? This is from Eddie Rizzo, 3282. Can you play the game without having to log in?
Oh yeah, you can play the game offline. That's no problem. Yep.
Wicked. That's great.
Of course,
that's
of course, you can't go to the battle hub because that's online only thing. But like World Tour mode, that's completely offline. A lot of fighting ground, that's offline, except for the ranked casual match kind of thing. Those modes.
Yep.
Everything else can be played offline.
Well, listen, pal, this was an incredible conversation with you, and I'm so grateful that you had the time to be able to take it with me and dig into this game. I haven't played it yet, but I'm going to say congratulations because this thing just looks marvelous, and I cannot wait to get it in my hot little hands.
Awesome, thanks a lot. I mean, it's been a long road for the whole team. There have been it's just packed with content, so it's been kind of like nonstop. And even now, like because at the time of this recording, it's about 3 weeks from launch, and we're still working on the game because
I bet you are.
There's so much things to do. I think the whole team put their hearts into this game, so I'm hoping that everyone gets a chance to play it. Once we make some announcements in the future, I think people are going to be extremely happy with what this title has in store for them.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you, Andrew. Congratulations, my friend. I can't wait to see you again in person. I can't wait to come back to Osaka and hopefully it'll be in the not too distant future, man.
Yeah,
maybe at a tournament or something. It would be incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to that too.
All right, brother. You take care.
And
cool. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the basement.
Thank you.